Hello and welcome to today's episode of Over 50 and Flourishing. If you are a mother, I hope you had a very happy Mother's Day. If you still have mom in your life, I hope you were able to celebrate her and have a great Mother's Day as well. The month of May, we are talking about mom, obviously Mother's Day. It's kind of like birthday, it can become birthday month. We're sort of making this Mother's Month. There are so many facets to this relationship to talk about. And so in today's podcast, I want to bring back my dear friend, Laurie Gerber, who's a relationship coach. And we're focusing today specifically on the mother-daughter relationship and the impact that that can have throughout our lives. She talks about something very fascinating, that we can either put mom on a pedestal or bring mom down and put her in the ditch. So she calls it the Pedestal Ditch Perspective. And she's also going to be talking about the 3Ls mothering assessment that she wants us all to take and why answering certain questions are so very important. And she's going to address body image issues as well. Fascinating. I've got something personal to share on that as well. I am so excited to talk about this subject today. Let's welcome Laurie Gerber to the podcast. This show is sponsored by Liquid IV. Well, now that it's getting hot, can I recommend some Liquid IV? It turns ordinary water into extraordinary hydration. Here's a great example for you. When I head to my workout class, I know at the end I'm exhausted. I need to get hydrated. I will take my 16 ounces of water. I will add a packet of Liquid IV to that water with sugar-free flavors like raspberry lemonade, white peach, rainbow sherbet. Are you ready for a long day with extraordinary hydration from Liquid IV? Get 20% off your first order of Liquid IV when you go to liquidiv.com and use code OVER50 at checkout. That's 20% off your first order with code OVER50 at liquidiv.com. Ever since I got hair extensions, my stylist said, you might want to switch over to a silk pillowcase to protect your hair. I did some research, and where did I go? Blissy. You got it. Hey, if you're going to do it right. Blissy's silk pillowcase is exquisite. More than 70 colors to choose from. Absolutely stunning. But can I tell you how amazing it feels? Honestly, I wish I would have done this sooner. Now, because you're a listener, Blissy is offering 60 nights risk-free plus an additional 30% off when you shop at blissy.com/over50pod. That's BLISSY.com/over50pod and use code over50pod to get an additional 30% off. Your skin and hair will thank you. You guys know I love to eat healthy, and Factor meals take the guesswork and the time out of the equation. Factor meals, they are fresh, they are ready to eat, and perfect for any lifestyle. You can pick from gourmet meals that fit your goals, things like Calorie Smart, Protein Plus, Keto, so much more. Their breakfast, lunches, guilt-free snacks, dessert, you name it. I love it. I'm always going for the protein. So, anything with chicken or meat is what I'm ordering. Get started at factormeals.com/Dominique50off and use code Dominique50off to get 50% off plus free shipping on your first box. That's code Dominique50off at factormeals.com/Dominique50off for 50% off plus free shipping. Welcome back, my dearest friend, Laurie Gerber. Laurie, anytime we talk about relationships, I'm like, where is she? I need her. I want her. She's got to come back. The central part of the relationships that we've talked about have been romantic relationships. I mean, we did one episode on daddy issues, and we're on the heels of Mother's Day. We are celebrating mom all month long, but we also need to get real about the relationship with mom, not only with our moms, but how we are as a mom. And there's another dynamic that you want to talk about, and that is how we mother ourselves, which I think is fascinating. So welcome back, friend.
Great to be here.
Yeah. So where do you want to start? I mean, we're in this interesting space where a lot of us are moms of older children and our mothers are older. And so we're in this sort of co-nurturing environment, right? We're the sandwich generation. We're still caring for adult children who are trying to launch, and we are now caring for our adult parents. So which relationship do you want to dive into first?
I mean, I think I want to talk I think what's on people's minds around Mother's Day or in the aftermath of Mother's Day, whether it went well or not, or whether your mother's alive or not, is what was my relationship with my mother. So I want to start there. I think we start there, and then we talk about being a mother, and then we talk about mothering oneself. I think that might be the right order. We'll see. But I think that in thinking about your relationship with your mother, I want to talk to all the groups, right? So first, I just want to say, if you have a great relationship with your mother, hallelujah. That's a miracle. Congratulations. If you are 10, I guess minimum 15 years apart, maximum 35, 40 years apart, that is a huge journey in time, in culture, in history. And if you can bridge the gap between those eras that each of you grew up in, it's really nothing short of a miracle. So congratulations. Keep up the great work. Tell your friends how you do it. Get it to be even deeper and richer. And the stuff that I'm going to talk about today, for those who don't have the most harmonious relationships with their mothers, it applies to you too, because you can always take it deeper. I am taking it deeper with my mother currently every single day. So it doesn't. My mother is turning 80 in a couple of months.
Okay. So the point is that there is always room for improvement, and there's always time to work on things if there is the effort, will, and desire, correct?
Perfectly said. Okay. No notes.
No notes. Okay. Thank you.
No notes.
Pay attention to you.
Yeah.
Okay. So what about those who are still struggling in this dynamic? And it is an imperfect relationship, right? No mom is perfect. No daughter is perfect. So, how can we bring ourselves to peace with this relationship?
Yeah. Well, I think the first step is to admit you have a problem, right? To say, if I'm not good with my own mother, it's going to affect the rest of my life. That's the mother and father, or whoever raised you. There's no getting around. Those are important relationships. And I really think some of us are still trying to go, well, I forgave them, or it doesn't matter. They don't affect me, or I'm so different from them, or they're impossible, right? Some version of I'm off the hook from having to go back and handle that. And I'm sorry to say, it just doesn't work, right? Like, I wish if it did, I promise I'd be on board, but it just doesn't work because whatever patterns they didn't resolve keep showing up in your life.
Mm-hmm.
And whatever
some examples of that.
So my favorite is their issues in love, right? Because I watch people making the same exact mistakes their parents made, or reactions to their parents' mistakes that they think are so opposite, that also end them up in dysfunctional love relationships. So if you think you don't have things to resolve with your parent about who they loved or didn't love, or how their love relationships were, you're wrong. Later, we'll talk about body image, right? Their relationship to their bodies and health. If you think that stuff isn't playing out in you, where else do you think you learned it from? Right. You learned it from the people you were raised with. And then finally, career, right? Like, we'll take the top 3 most important things people come to me for coaching about. If your mother did not figure out how to be happy in her life, whether it was a career or a community pursuit or whatever she did with her time, if she didn't figure out how to be expressed in that, you're stuck holding that bag. There's just no two ways about it. So it's not just that whatever issues your mother doesn't resolve, you end up with. It's also whatever issues you had with your mother that you don't resolve, you end up repeating in your work relationships, your love relationships, and your relationship to yourself.
Yeah. It's interesting. I find and I reflect as a young daughter, I remember I had my mother up on a pedestal. I mean, she could do no wrong. Right. And then the minute I developed, I'd say, a little more cognitive function, critical thinking, analysis, suddenly in the teenage years, you start seeing things and it's like, maybe it's not right to put someone on a pedestal. Maybe no one deserves to be on a pedestal, because you start to see human behavior and choices and decisions that you start to critique and analyze and question. So, let's talk about that. And really, should we be putting a parent on a pedestal in the first place?
Yeah, well, I wanted to talk about the phenomena I've coined the pedestal and the ditch phenomena. Which is, and you spoke to the very first part of that, which is that as children, we by nature cannot help but put our parents on a pedestal. They're literally taller. They act in godlike ways, right? They feed us, they clothe us, they bathe us, they put us to sleep. They are in charge of everything. They control our entire world. They are godlike to us in our perception as children. So there's no way our parents aren't on a pedestal. And you hear, I mean, I watch a lot of comedians, so you hear a lot of comedians tell the story of, I didn't even know it was weird until I went to my friend's house, right? Like I just thought that was normal. So if you had a dysfunctional parent, if you had a parent that was an addict or a narcissist or just neglectful or abusive, most kids don't even know that's weird or wrong or bad until they hit a certain age, because we don't know any different and we have to depend on that person. So we have to put them on a pedestal. So that's the worst extreme. But even in the most functional of families, you still think your parents are perfect until you come of an age where you go, nope. Not only can I see more now and understand more now, and I see how my parents interact if they're still around each other, but I personally have to individuate and become an adult. So I have to figure out what I think. So then I have to think about, do I agree with who they are? Do I like who they are, et cetera?
Which would explain all the butting heads and the friction that takes place during this time of adolescence.
And, I think I did a wonderful job parenting, but when my daughter turned 12, it was like, everything I did was, I went from the pedestal to the ditch in overnight. And
you mean ditch? Do you mean like a physical ditch? Like you got tossed in the ditch?
How a pedestal is high, a ditch is low.
Gotcha.
I did not pass, just even. I didn't pass regular human. I went right into the ditch. And that is really, I don't know if everyone experiences that very sharp, sort of, I don't know if it's hormonal, developmental, or what, psychological, but there is that moment. And for a lot of us, I think we put our parent all the way into the ditch once we realize we were wrong, right? It's kind of like embarrassing to be like, oh, you were cheating. Oh, you were binging. Oh, you were lying to me. Oh, you were smoking pot every night. Like whatever it was. It's so jarring to your concept, and it's kind of humbling and embarrassing. And you're like, well, you're a jerk.
Or a hypocrite, right? Then we find our parents to be hypocrites, do as I say, not as I do. How many times have we heard that?
Right. And that is, to a 12, 13, 14, 19-year-old, that is the worst crime, to be a hypocrite. And so I think we then, and because we're individuating at that time too, we then write them off. We don't ask questions. We don't try to figure out who we are based on who they are. We don't look for a balanced view. We just leave them in the ditch. And if we find out they did something really bad, we don't want to be anything like them. So we're out of there, and we're going to try to go figure it out on our own and leave them for dead in the ditch.
Yeah. Laurie, I've known some children who have almost idolized and worshiped their parents to the point where they could see no wrong. Healthy or unhealthy?
Yeah. You can't see yourself clearly if you can't see your parents clearly, which is so weird.
Yeah.
Right. And honestly, I think it's the reverse too, right? If you can't see yourself clearly, you can't see your parents clearly. But it's actually, I think, easier to look at your parents first because you've been judging them forever, right? And maybe you've avoided looking at yourself, but I think it's actually easier to look at your parents first. And when I work with clients in the very first or second session I work with clients, I have them break down their parents' traits, positive and negative, all the positive and all the negative, and how it shows up in you. And it's like, what? Right. And I can see the people who put their parents in a ditch and never got them out, the people who put them on a pedestal and and the people who have come to that balance, which I consider to be the adult phase.
Okay. So neither, both are healthy, but staying in one place for too long is unhealthy, is what we're saying.
You have to bring it into a balanced view.
A balance and a reality. And then I would assume at some point a conversation. So I want to take a pause, thank our sponsors for this podcast. And then, once we've determined if our parents are on a pedestal or in a ditch or somewhere in between, how do we negotiate that? How do we resolve those feelings in ourselves? And then how do we actually bring what we're feeling to the parent themselves? Is there a safe space to even do that? So I'm going to talk to Laurie and we'll dive into all of that good stuff right after the break. This show is sponsored by Liquid IV. Think about all the things we pack in our bag for the day. Maybe some SPF, a brush, a wallet for certain, some sunglasses. Well, now that it's getting hot, can I recommend some Liquid IV? It turns ordinary water into extraordinary hydration. Here's a great example for you. When I head to my workout class, I know at the end I'm exhausted. I need to get hydrated. I will take my 16 ounces of water. I will add a packet of Liquid IV to that water with sugar-free flavors like raspberry lemonade, white peach, rainbow sherbet. I am guaranteeing that I'm getting amazing hydration, 3 times the electrolytes of the leading sports drink, 8 essential vitamins and nutrients, always non-GMO, vegan, gluten-free, dairy-free, and soy-free. I call that winning. Are you ready for a long day with extraordinary hydration from Liquid IV? Get 20% off your first order of Liquid IV when you go to liquidiv.com and use code OVER50 at checkout. That's 20% off your first order with code OVER50 at liquidiv.com. Ever since I got hair extensions, my stylist said you might want to switch over to a silk pillowcase to protect your hair. I did some research, and where did I go? Blissy. You got it. Hey, if you're going to do it right. Blissy's silk pillowcase is exquisite. More than 70 colors to choose from. Absolutely stunning. But can I tell you how amazing it feels? Honestly, I wish I would have done this sooner. Not only is it great for the hair, but it's amazing on your skin as well. You can actually see healthier hair and skin. Regarding the hair, it eliminates frizz and it protects coarse and color treated hair. It is dermatologist tested and recommended and clinically proven not to clog pores, unlike cotton. Who knew that? Naturally hydrating silk fibers that keep skin moisturized all night. And for my midlife ladies, can I just say, naturally cooling and breathable. No more hot flashes from that pillowcase. No, ma'am. Now, because you're a listener, Blissy is offering 60 nights risk-free plus an additional 30% off when you shop at blissy.com/over50pod. That's BLISSY.com/over50pod and use code over50pod to get an additional 30% off. Your skin and hair will thank you. Welcome back, dear friend Laurie Gerber. We're talking about relationships with mom. Some may have had a great Mother's Day. Some may have had a mediocre Mother's Day. Some may be still processing and doing therapy over Mother's Day. I don't know. You know, the mother-daughter dynamic is such an interesting and unique one. And there's so much to dissect. Before the break, we were talking about putting mom on a pedestal and then mom gets put in the ditch, you know, when we discover certain realities about character, behavior, choices, decisions, and all of that. And, you know, Laura, you were saying neither place is a good place to hang out. There's got to be this reality and this merging of the two. So how do we get there?
Oh, let's start with those of us who are in denial and we think our mother is perfect and can do no wrong. Mm-hmm. The only problem with that is that we think we do wrong. Right. Mm-hmm. And we criticize ourselves. And so if we cannot see ourselves in context of the lineage, what we learned, what we grew up with, where we come from, we're going to be too hard on ourselves, actually. And we're also going to not understand the negative patterns that we're in.
Right.
And I think a lot of people, especially who were parentified as children, who felt they had to take care of mom as children, are actually afraid to tell the truth about the flaws of mom because mom would be crushed, or mom would die, or mom would kill herself, or mom would hold a grudge for a year, or cry, or guilt trip, or on and on of the consequences that could happen if you even tell the truth to yourself, much less tell the truth to your mother about her flaws. But I'm here to say everybody has at least 7. It's unanimous. Like everybody has at least 7 bad character traits. I've never met someone who didn't.
Well, now I want to know what the 7 are.
Yeah, well, it's different, right? If you think of the 7 deadly sins, you know, sloth, gluttony, greed, wrath, lust, you know them probably. Anyone can Google them. They're variations on those, but everyone's are different. So you have to ask yourself, you know, what are my traits? I bet you they're like your parents or a reaction to, or a variation of. We could go into that, but if you really sit down for a moment and close your eyes and think about what it was like to grow up with your mother and ask yourself the question, what wasn't so great? You will be able to come up with a list. anything from cold to mean to self-critical, critical of herself, self-deprecating, shallow, guilt-tripping, hovering, over-involved, selfish, nosy, judgmental, bossy, all the way to addict or narcissist, right? So there's obviously grades of dysfunction, but you want to find what those are, and then you want to see how they are in you. And the reason you want to see how they are in you, either a variation of it, they were mean, you're passive aggressive, right? Could be a variation, or they were incredibly acquiescent and you became no way, a reaction to. You want to see how it is playing out in you, because if you can see that it's a lineage issue and that it's being inherited and handed down, that is your first chance to interrupt it and evolve it. If you don't know where it's coming from and what it is, you really don't have the power to do that.
Yeah. As I listen to you talk, that requires a lot of thought and analysis. Do you recommend people actually start with writing down this list of where mom went wrong or issues or hangups or whatnot? So it's like put mom in a line and then put yourself in a line and then see your response. Do you recommend people see this?
I recommend 5 to 7 positive first, right? Like you don't have to sit. This is a whole human just like you. This is not, they were all bad. Right. So do the positives first, then do the negatives. And next to each one, how that shows up in you. Same, variation of, reaction to. So you can see that this is something that is way bigger than you. This is called lineage.
What if people haven't identified how that is showing up in themselves? Where do you even start with that?
This is your chance to look. And if just by sitting and asking yourself and being vulnerable enough to do that is not enough, guess what? You can ask your friends. You can ask your mother. That's actually a really good one, right? You go, Mom, I've noticed I'm, neurotic. Do you notice that about me? What do you see? And then when she's done telling you how you're neurotic, you're like,
And have I told you that you are too?
No, she might even
mom.
She might even figure it out herself. You can't get over how many people find it much easier to self-reflect when you're self-reflecting in front of them. Right? That's what we're doing, right? We're self-reflecting in front of people. So you self-reflect in front of your mother, and all of a sudden your mother's like, you got that from me. Sorry. And it's not even a fight or a confrontation. It's just, if you're going to be vulnerable and admit you have that issue and they can help you figure it out, they might want to also admit they have it too, which then makes the whole thing not about blame or angst. It makes it like, together, let's evolve the lineage. And that's really the dream. And that's what's possible if you don't make your own defensive, right? Because
boy, that requires some serious thought on approach and overcoming fear. Think about, people are just so crippled by fear because they're afraid of what the parent is going to say. It's like, oh my gosh, I'm opening the door for them to maybe throw more salt on the wound. So you've got to trust that A, you can handle it if it happens, but B, open yourself up to the possibility of connection that you're talking about that can happen during moments like this.
Yeah. Well, there's a lot of preparation. I don't recommend you just do this willy-nilly. I work with people over quite a period of time to prepare them for just what you said, whatever is going to happen. But to your first question, if you can't find out in your own subconscious, by thinking, you can ask your loved ones, your family members, your friends, I've noticed this thing shows up in me. Can you help me figure out how? And most people, if they're not scared of you, will give you some hints and it will help you figure it out. And the idea of that is not just for you to improve yourself and become more self-aware, but also the more that you can understand that the trait is still in you who were raised in modern times when therapy was a thing, then maybe you can forgive them and your mother who was raised in cave people times. With not the tools we have, no podcasts, no therapy was not a thing when our mothers were growing up.
Yeah, it was kind of cutting edge in the 60s. I remember my mother really getting into psychology and Nathaniel Branden, and there was this whole wave that was starting to take place. But you're right. This is modern time belief system in psychology. And we were talking also, about, okay, mom's on the pedestal, we need to be reality. But also, what if we've put mom in a ditch constantly and we're not looking at the attributes? How do we get her out of the ditch?
Right. And by the way, let me just say, you and I had moms who were looking at self-help in the 60s. Mm-hmm. That's how come we're here doing this now.
That would make sense.
But most people did not have moms that were doing that in the 60s. Just statistically speaking, most people had moms who were raising a family and taking care of the kids and keeping it together with God knows what kind of partner. That's really the truth of what most people's moms were like. So we are very privileged to have had moms that had an inkling about introspection, and that's why we're on this side of the podcast right now.
Right, gratefully.
But I do love that historical context, because I think it is just nearly impossible to remember that things were so different 10 years ago, 20 years ago, 30 years ago, 40 years ago, like so different. There was no internet. there was no looking up, is this normal? There was no group you could get onto, or Facebook group. Like, there was nothing you could do to get support. You were alone with your daughter.
Right. And maybe you told your neighbor, or you hoped it was in the Encyclopedia Britannica.
Oh my gosh. And let me tell you, the stuff she was dealing with was not probably
Britannica. Exactly.
So if the mom is in a ditch, it is equally problematic, because, again, if you can't have compassion for your mother, you can't have compassion for yourself. And if you don't understand your mother's story, you don't understand yours. Her story is your story, just like her genetics are your genetics if you come from her genetically. Sorry, like that's just how this works. So for those people, I recommend this for everybody, but specifically for those people, I have a list of 150 questions I ask you to ask your mother. And if she's not here, I want you to ask a friend, a relative, or even a medium. Like, there is somebody who could help you get the answers to these questions if you are ready and want to learn them. And we're only getting more and more knowledgeable about history, right? And being able to, uncover things that may have in the past seemed like you couldn't possibly find out the truth about.
Can you give us like a Cliff Notes version of what these 150 questions are? Just kind of skim through.
Yeah, well, so it's this simple. Imagine all the areas of your life, right? You've got your relationship to self, you've got your love life, your sex life, your health, your body image, your career or contribution in the world, how you use your time, how you parent, how you feel about parenting or not parenting. There's your relationship to money. There's your relationship to money. There's your relationship to fun, to spirituality. All of those areas of life, you learn them from your parents and you learn them growing up. So the questions you would ask start with, you might not even know who was in your parents' family. Like, do you have brothers and sisters? Do you have cousins? Like, you might not, literally, there are hidden family members in a lot of families. So who'd you grow up with? What were the qualities of your mother and father? What did you like about where you grew up? What kinds of activities did you do growing up? What was your relationship with your siblings, your cousins, your neighbors, your friends? Who was your best friend? Why? And then it's like, okay, what was your journey in your career? What was your journey in your love life? How did you lose your virginity? What worked and didn't work about your sex life? What was your relationship to money? What were the things your parents taught you about money? How did that affect you? What were your best and worst experiences with regard to money, sex, love, fill in the blank? That is your personal history. And most of us think that is none of our business. And unfortunately, sometimes our parents agree until they're on their deathbed and they're like, wait, I have some things to tell you. I don't want it to die with me, right? I don't want not just the secrets, but I don't want the stories to die with me. But that is so unfortunate, because if your parents are alive, they have an enormous amount that they on some level do want to tell you. The good, the bad, the ugly, the secrets, so that you don't have to repeat them and you can learn from the mistakes and the bad traits of your lineage.
You know what I find to be such a wonderful and fascinating journey, and maybe it's because I'm a journalist at heart and I love asking questions. But one of the things that I've loved about having a podcast and having my mother on my podcast as many times as I did before she passed away was that I got to ask her a lot of questions and viewers got to ask her a lot of questions. And it was this wonderful deep dive into this woman, a lot of which I knew the answers, but some were new and fresh to me. And I think we all have this amazing opportunity to be the journalist in our relationship with our parent and literally sit down and say, you know what, I want to interview you. I want to know everything about you because I love you and I'm curious. And would you be willing to sit down and do it on video? Because that's the ultimate gift, is having video preservation of your parent actually talking and watching the gestures and mannerisms. What a phenomenal opportunity as I sit here and I listen to all the questions that you're talking about.
Yeah. And just, as you know, my father passed away a few weeks ago. So,
yes,
and I can just tell you, because sitting with everyone who knew him and sitting with my mother and hearing stories, even though I was asking him questions constantly, Dominique, I followed my own coaching. I have videos and voice recordings and notes, and I didn't know everything. I didn't. And thank God I can still find things out because there were other people who witnessed and knew. But it's this fleeting moment of possibility that you actually can find out who they were. And if you don't think that has everything to do with who you are, whether you like them or not, it's just such a loss. And so I'm just saying that from the field, right up to the minute news, you definitely don't know your parents. You definitely don't.
That's powerful. And it's reminding us that it is ripe for opportunity here to get in, because at this age and stage, we don't know how much time we've got left. And it's such a crime to feel like you've missed out on an opportunity. So I am grateful, Laurie, that we have had this conversation and that you shared what you did. You know, I know that I know where you are, you know, it's very raw and it's powerful as you kind of move through your grief, but to your point, you know, you did all of these things, and I'm sure it gives you peace knowing that you have those answers, you have those conversations, and they are forever preserved in your heart, your memories, and those of your siblings as well. There's so much more to talk about as we talk about relationships in general. I know you're going to talk about the 3 L's, the mothering assessment. I'm so curious as to what that is. Let's take a quick break. Thank our sponsors. We're back with Laurie Gerber, our relationship coach, right after this.
You guys know I love to eat healthy, and Factor meals take the guesswork and the time out of the equation. I love Factor. First of all, there are so many great menu items to choose from. We're going to get to those in just a minute, but you literally order online, they get delivered to you fresh, and then you put them in your fridge, pop it in your microwave 2 minutes later, and you are at your kitchen table having a wonderful meal. This way, if you've had a really long day, you don't need to stand in the kitchen, prep, and cook. Factor meals, they are fresh, they are ready to eat, and perfect for any lifestyle. Now, I talked about weekly menu options. You can pick from gourmet meals that fit your goals, things like Calorie Smart, Protein Plus, Keto, so much more. Their breakfast, lunches, guilt-free snacks, dessert, you name it. I love it. I'm always going for the protein. So, you know, anything with chicken or meat is what I'm ordering. Get started at factormeals.com/Dominique50off and use code Dominique50off to get 50% off plus free shipping on your first box. That's code Dominique50off at factormeals.com/Dominique50off for 50% off plus free shipping. When was the last time you bought fish from a market and you kind of looked at it as they were packing it up and thought, wonder about your story? I used to question everything from nutrition to taste to sustainability. That is until I discovered Wild Alaskan Company. Man, what a great way to get wild caught, perfectly portioned, nutrient-dense seafood delivered directly to your door. Trust me, you haven't tasted fish this good. I absolutely adore their Pacific halibut, Pacific cod, coho salmon. I'm kind of a simply grilled kind of gal, you know, a little oil and lemon, salt and pepper. I am good to go. And you know what? I don't have to worry either. If you're not completely satisfied with your first box, Wild Alaskan Company will give you a full refund, no questions asked, no risk, just high quality seafood. Hey, not all fish are the same. Get seafood you can trust. Go to wildalaskan.com/over50 for $35 off your first box of premium wild caught seafood. That's wildalaskan.com/over50 for $35 off your first order. Thanks to Wild Alaskan Company for sponsoring this episode. Ladies, we desperately need fiber. Fiber diversity supports a balanced gut microbiome, and yet only 5% of Americans get enough fiber in their diet. Only 5%. And it's hard to do. So that's why I started using Sugar to Fiber Probiotic Mix every single day. This concept is so unique. Sugar to Fiber turns sugar in the foods that I eat into a prebiotic fiber called leaven fiber. It's really hard to get leaven from a typical diet, and it helps to improve the amount and diversity of fiber that my body receives. So simple, just take a pack of Sugar to Fiber, I add it to my morning smoothie, and I know at that point I am supporting my gut health with this routine at the start of my day. And as I get older, gut health becomes more and more important to me because I know it has an impact on my brain and my body. Go to zbiotics.com/over50 and use code over50 at checkout for 15% off any first-time orders of ZBiotics probiotics. ZBiotics has a 100% money-back guarantee, so if you're unsatisfied for any reason, they'll refund your money, no questions asked. Thank you, ZBiotics, for sponsoring this episode.
Let me tell you a quick story. My best friend from when I was 12 years old told me this story about my dad. This will just give you like a little window into how I come from him. So she's 12. I was particularly pretty when I was 12. I was like really nailing it at that moment in my life. And she was
middle school time. Yeah.
I nailed it in middle school. College, there was a long period of not so good, but she was very awkward and she would get cold sores. Mm-hmm. And she was 12 years old and she broke out in this big cold sore on her lip and she was so traumatized and so upset. And her dad was actually out of the picture. So that's like an extra layer. My dad was very caring to particularly people who didn't have fathers in their life. So she's crying at my house and my father pulls her aside and sits her down and she's, your lip is full. It's sexy. It's beautiful. You need to not let this take you down. Like, this is not right. This is not worth it. You're, beautiful girl, please own this and move on. And she said that was like the most, first of all, her first reframe ever. And second of all, she believed him and she decided from that day on to own her cold sores. And now whenever she gets a cold sore, she says, I'm sexy. I'm sexy. I have a full lip and I'm going to go out there and own it. And she says she not only didn't she ever get over that affirmation of her beauty, but she took it as an example of mindset and just like, no, nothing is going to stop me, right? Like, I'm in charge of what I think of myself.
Well, what's so awesome is that we hear things about our parents through friends, stories that we didn't know. And when you said that, it reminded me, I was in Houston not long ago for my 40th high school reunion, and I was interviewing some girlfriends just about, days gone by and memories and things like that. And my friend Marisa said that her sister Margarita always shares the story of when she came over to my house one day and she saw my mom vacuuming in high heels. And that like blew her mind and just gave her this whole new perspective.
Like YouTuber before there were YouTubers.
Of that you could be this glamorous, sexy woman vacuuming the house. That you don't have to look a certain way to do it. And I'm like,
awesome.
That's why, I can totally see Audrey doing that, but yet how impressionable that was, because clearly her mother wasn't that way. And so my mom painted a whole new picture for her of what it meant to be.
And it explains you.
Yeah.
You're like willing to clean up the mess and also look
absolutely great. Awesome. But see, to your point, these are the stories that fill it out. They paint the picture. That's so cool.
Yeah.
Well, Laurie, now that we shared these funny anecdotal moments about your dad and my mom and the importance of storytelling and hearing also about our parents, not only from our perspective, but also friends and people who've known us and grown up with us, I think that provides such extra color And I love hearing that. I love hearing about the impact that they've had on other people and not just us. But we've been talking extensively about doing a deep dive into our parents and our mothers, history. Let's talk a little bit more about that and what else we need to be doing.
Yeah, I mean, it's fun to think back on the good things, and then there are the not so good things, and there are the mysteries, right? I really think it's three categories. There are the good things, which we want to go back and relive and draw strength from and draw character from. There are the not so good things, which we want to draw lessons from and inspiration to evolution. And then there are the mysteries, where I'm challenging you to see if you can find out what really happened, because just like a kid thinks the divorce is their fault, like if something's a mystery, you make up a bad story. It's the same thing with understanding for example, understanding our parents' marriage, right? If you don't know what really happened there, and most of us do not, we have one sliver of one perspective usually on what happened in our parents' marriage, even if it was good. We have like one sliver. I'm just thinking of all the things I learned in the last 10 years about my parents in their 70s and 80s about their marriage that I had no idea. And I only asked because I have a coach, right? So, so those mysteries solve mysteries in your own life and solve hurts and solve damage in your own life when you understand. And one of the beautiful things is that it can help you have a balanced story about how love works, where a lot of us have a very dysfunctional idea of how love works. But if you understand how both parties chose and the choices they made and the things they sacrificed and the things they told themselves in order to stay in dysfunction, it can help you not repeat the same dysfunction. I'll just tell you one story about a client that I worked with recently who, and this is an outlier example, but it's just to give you a sense of the range of mysteries that people are living with, right? Like tolerating, I would say. She had visited her father in prison and seen on the list of people who had visited him the name of her mother and the name of another woman who she knew of but didn't know, and didn't know why she was visiting her father. And to this day does not know why that woman was visiting her father. Her mother's alive, her father is gone. There is no real reason she can't ask. And I'm here to say, I think it's your birthright to know. I think it's your birthright to know your medical history, and I think it's your birthright to know your family history, because it's yours. It's just like your DNA is yours, just like your blood type is yours, just like your hair color is yours. Your family history is yours. That does not mean they have to tell you. It's a choice. In fact, my dad had a little compartment that was like, this you can't know. And till the day he died, I was asking. So they don't have to tell you just because you're asking, but you do have a right to know. And if you ask it from a place of, I want the best for myself and my future, I forgive you, I want to understand you, most parents will tell. Most parents will unlock those little compartments if you set it up right.
So are you encouraging this client of yours to then find out who this other woman was and then approach her and say, hey, I'm just curious. I noticed this. And can you share with me what your relationship
At least to ask mom, did you know? Right? Like just that mystery. Like, and by the way, a lot of people know their partners are seeing other people. I would say 50% of parents who were cheating, it was agreed upon on some level. And wouldn't that be interesting to know? That they had an unspoken agreement, a spoken agreement. They were both cheating. Like we always think one person's on a pedestal and one's on a ditch because that's an easy story. And you can walk away like, I'll just be like that parent. Right. Like, but it's not that simple. It's
there are always two sides to every story, and there's always culpability in some way in the situation.
And who are we protecting at this point? Like, you think you're going to hurt your mother's feelings that like now she's going to find out he cheated? Like, what are the chances? She didn't see the name on the, really? You think you're, and then you have to hold the secret for your family? Is that the logic? Like, you're protecting your mother at 85? I get it. Like, I do understand, but unfortunately that stuff repeats if we don't unpack it and all get the lesson from it and all decide we're moving on.
Yeah. So, I mean, what I'm hearing you say is that all conversations, including sometimes potentially really hard conversations, really need to happen no matter the age. You just made a great point. Well, they're 85. I mean, do I really want to bring this up? Do I really want to cause pain or hurt? But then you're thinking, well, what about the pain and hurt I'm going to have to carry with me for the rest of my life if I don't potentially have this conversation?
Right. And I will say I've done this hundreds of times, if not thousands, and it doesn't go badly if you do it well. It doesn't. And I wouldn't send you in to do it if you weren't prepared to do it. So I'm not saying go do it, everyone. I'm saying, reach out to me if you think you maybe should, right? Because, or a good therapist or a good coach and design it and plan it. It's not, if your parent is on a pedestal or in a ditch, you're not ready, right? Like you have to come to a balance first and then design the conversation you want to have. But I really say it's like Christmas. Like there's so many gifts under the tree that you're just not opening if you don't try, right? And they can say no. That's the other thing. You have to get consent. You're not barging into anyone's life. They would have to say, yes, you can interview me, right? And then you get to try. But most parents are actually, think about how you would feel as a parent if your kid said, can I interview you? I want to know you better. Like, really? You wouldn't want that?
Yeah. And then how do you encourage people? I mean, yes, it all sounds really wonderful and great. And then all of a sudden you hit those really tough questions and there's that tension and that awkwardness. And what if that parent does shut down in the moment and isn't forthright or doesn't know how to handle it, or maybe doesn't want to handle it at the time? I'm sure you coach people on how to respond to that, right? Yes. So that this doesn't become a roadblock or a deterrent in the relationship altogether. Right.
I mean, I tried to get my dad to quit smoking. Oh, how many conversations, awkward, uncomfortable, angry, tear, where I could have lost that relationship over that topic, and then, so again, if they put up a boundary, you have to respect it, but don't you then go give up. My dad really did offer a week before he died. Let me tell you more. So he knew what I wanted to know and I didn't give up. And I did intend that he would tell me everything. I never gave up on that. So you just be the compassionate, more evolved person that you are, being from the therapy generation, and listen to them. And if they say they feel uncomfortable, you say, I hear you, that you feel uncomfortable. You don't have to continue. And then just shut your mouth, because guess what? They'll probably continue.
Good point. Because badgering gets you nowhere.
Peaceful, quiet, inviting, accepting, appreciating, saying thank you. You're doing this for me. I appreciate what this does for my life. Whenever you're ready, right? And then,
yeah, beautiful. And that's so great, because in that moment, it is a challenge, because your impulse and reaction may be to say one, but you have to do a total reframe in the moment and give the perspective of, thank you for sharing with me what you have. I understand this is difficult and I'm really grateful, that we've had this conversation. And then you're right, stop it and then see where it goes.
Right. And there's so many stories of the mom who calls back and is like, okay, I have more to tell you. Are you ready? Can you interview me again? When's our next interview?
Yeah, because they've had a chance to think, process, and let all of that emotion diffuse. Because when you get caught up in that emotional moment, you're not going anywhere, are you?
No. And it is, honestly, I think it's the best gift you can give your aging, dying parent, is to have actually verbally made their peace with a person that they love, and that they care about and that they're literally handing off to in every way.
It's the best gift you can give each other if you can get there.
I think so. And as you know, I think you can do it in letters if the person is not alive and through various spiritual means. So I don't exclude anybody who has the desire. And I also don't fault somebody who was severely abused from saying, I'm not going to go back there to that person. Fine. You can still do it in a surrogate kind of a way.
Oh, that's interesting. Yeah, you're right. Because some relationships were so hurtful, so toxic and painful that you may not get that closure, or it can just be, it can be too much for that person. Yeah. And
narcissists are known for not being up for that. So, there are exceptions.
How do people, and I know there's so much to talk about and so little time, but in those situations, what do you recommend people do if you just cannot have that relationship?
Well, I want you to I want you to do the traits work, positives, negatives, how it's in you. I want you to ask and answer those questions. Again, even a narcissist might say how they grew up, what their parents were like, what, would answer the family history questions so that you can have that. But when it comes to holding them to account for things that hurt you, that's where you have to either do that with a surrogate or a proxy, because saying it out loud is important. That's why therapy works, right? Saying it out loud actually goes a long way, even if you can't get the validation from the person themselves. Yeah. And owning, and also a lot of narcissists can hear what you want to own, right? Like they can hear, oh, let me own, I kept knocking on a closed door, or I kept trying to squeeze water from a stone, or I kept trying to make you into something that you're not, or I kept judging you, or they can hear your apology for your part in the story, but they can't give the apology you deserve. And so you can do everything you can do with that parent and feel good about having done that so that your kids don't have to repeat it. And then you can do with a surrogate, a proxy, a coach, a therapist, a friend, the part where you get validated for what hurt you, and start to release and feel those feelings that probably you put down, so that you can move past it and not let them weigh you down forever, because that's, even a narcissistic parent wouldn't really want that. Nobody really wants that for their child.
Got it. We have the 3 L's mothering assessment to talk about. What is that?
Okay. So originally I thought of this as an assessment you would do with yourself as a mother, because now I'm turning the attention to a lot of us are mothers. Not all of us obviously listening are mothers, but a lot of us are mothers. But then I realized this assessment can be done when you're thinking about relationship to your own mother, to sort of analyze what was missing, because you do need to inventory what was missing and feel your feelings about that and speak your truth about that, and then move on from that. And I also think this can actually be done as a self-reflection on how you are as a mother to yourself, because ultimately I think evolutionarily here in the 2020s, I think women are here to learn how to mother themselves. I think we are here to do a do-over on what the mothers of the 50s, 60s, and 70s did, because they only had the capacity that they had. And now we have all these.
Is that another name for self-care, by the way?
Maybe. I think it's an aspect of self-care. I think it's an aspect of self-care. And when I define the 3 L's, I think you'll see what I mean.
Okay.
When I think about what a child needs to thrive, I think about the 3 L's: love, like, and listening. Okay. So what do I mean? Love, unconditional love. A child wants to just know there's a safe space where they're going to be accepted. And there's this safety net of, if everything else fails, my mommy loves me.
Right.
Okay. That's it. That's the whole thing. It's a feeling. It's a vibe. There's nothing to do, right? Other than know it, be it, say it, feel it. The second thing is they want to be liked, which means you have to know them. And I think, especially in our parents' generation, Dominique, you were a reflection of your parents. You were their business card or their ad for how good of a person or well they were doing in life. So you just needed to look good to the world. And that was the focus. Either look pretty, look thin, have a good career, make money, build a family, have a fence, have a good partner, don't be gay. Like, just a lot of rules about how it had to look.
Right.
And there wasn't a lot of, let me get to know the unique individual that you are. And a lot of our mothers also were working, right? Like, they were parenting and working. So they weren't that around necessarily. I'm a Gen Xer. So, like, my mother was not around when I was growing up. So and yay, because she taught me to have a career, but there was, we had to catch up on getting to know each other. Right. Like, actually getting to know each other as people. And I think that's something that is possible now possible now for us to do for our children, possible for us to do with our mothers, and possible for us to do with ourselves. And we must get to know ourselves and like the unique individual, my 7 bad traits, my 7 good traits, my history, my, like, who am I? And do I like this person? So I think a kid wants to be known, which means you have to ask questions. And L number 3, listen. You have to ask the questions and then you have to listen. Right. So when your kid wants to talk about choir or soccer or the gossip in school or their marriage or their issues with their neighbors or their job, you have to listen. good old fashioned listening so that the child feels like and loved.
Yeah. So it's the best gift ever is the gift of the 2 ears versus the one mouth.
And so hard for us mothers because we really do know better.
Yeah, well, of course. Of course we do.
Know how it ends and we know better. But they have to figure it out themselves. So I think if you are supplying those 3 L's, you're doing the thing that your child wants most. It's more important than babysitting. It's more important than FaceTime. It's more important than gifts. It's more important than money.
Yep.
That's what the kids actually need. Grown kids actually need. That's what we need from ourselves. And that's what we need to teach our mothers how to provide, because they certainly were not trained in how to provide that for us. We actually have to weirdly provide it for them so then they can give it back to us.
Yeah, which, is so fascinating because yet it's another reason why I think so many women our age feel such burnout is that we're having to do so much. It's like we come from this age and era of all this wisdom, right? We have access to all of this stuff. So not only do we have to teach our children the way, but we're also having to teach our parents the way in some cases, and then offer that gift to ourselves. And it can be overwhelming.
It's a lot. It is a lot. But I will say this, I do think it comes back. I do think it comes back to you. And I'll say, because I'm in the midst of grieving and my 20 and 22-year-old children have to show up for me.
Yeah.
And I realize, the investment, my son spent the last week of my father's life in my stead while I was on vacation with my mother and father.
Yep.
22 years old, did my jobs, stood in for me. So I mean, I'll never get over that. That's so profound. And it's because I gave him the L's, right? And so yes, it is too much to give. Yes. I'm not saying I'm not overwhelmed with the enormity of it, but it does, I believe, what you sow, you reap. And back.
The reward is bountiful. When you see things like that happen, and it doesn't take a lot, does it? It can just take one act of thoughtfulness, kindness, tenderness invested and sowed back into you. And it's like, wow, man, that was so worth it. You're willing to do it all over again.
Yes. And even the mothering I've done of my own mother, now she's healthier and happier and more grounded and more peaceful. So she's less of a pain in the ass, right? Everything you put in, you do get out, right? So don't be a martyr, y'all.
Yeah, good girl. There you go. Throw my New Yorker throwing some Texas my way. You teased at the beginning of this podcast about body image issues, and I'm not going to let that one go. I'm so curious as to what you mean by that, and I even have a personal story to share on that as well. So go.
Yeah. So as I was reflecting on the baggage that people bring from their mother to the coaching couch, so much of it is body image, and so much of it is my relationship to how I look, my body, my food. And one of the exercises I do with folks is thought logging, and we literally write down our thoughts. And I have done this exercise a couple times in my life where I just keep a running list of thoughts. We have about 12 to 60,000 a day. Mm-hmm. And what I learned, the amount of airtime that thinking about body and food take up in the sum total of my day, educated, successful human with a brain over here, that's a lot of thought time on body, beauty, food, comparing all of it, right? I'm sure I'm sure you've had episodes on this. So that's remarkable to me. And that is absolutely a sign of our culture and our times, right? I'm sure 2,000 years ago, the thoughts about food were like, am I going to get any? Their thoughts about food have changed over time.
Right.
Specifically women over 50, which means we grew up in the 70s, 60s,
70s, 80s.
Right? Versus women who grew up in the 40s, 50s, 60s. Those are the generations we're talking about. Like I said in the beginning, the cultural change in that time is so stark, is so different that there is it would be shocking, like I said in the beginning, miraculous if we lined up. And so I think we got so much baggage from our parents from particularly our mothers. And we looked at our mothers and we looked at how I see my daughter looking at me about how I think about my body, how I treat my body, how I talk about my body, how I feel in my, like, she's watching everything that I'm doing, just like I was watching everything my mother was doing and saying. And I watch my kids who are in their 20s look at their grandmothers and go, stop talking about my body. Stop talking about how I look. Stop talking about my outfit. Stop talking about how much I weigh. Stop talking about, they are in such a different era.
Yes.
And I take inspiration from their, we'll call it body positivity, because it's just, I feel a little, sandwiched between a generation that was all about how you look and then a generation that finds that absolutely repugnant and offensive. Anyway, so I think part of coming to a healthy relationship to our mothers and what our mothers gave us is to take another look at all those thoughts and theories and really only keep the ones we really value and like. And that's the real assessment, right? What do I want to keep and what do I want to let go of? And what do I want to teach my kids about how to relate to their bodies and their health?
Yeah. And what do I want to teach my mom about that? Because it's funny, you and I are of the same age and generation. I'm a little older than you, but my mom, grew up in the 40s and the 50s, and those, icons, the women of the day and the Hollywood elite. I mean, they were beautiful. They were thin. They were stunning. They were elegant. They were stylish. And so they epitomized what a woman should look like. And I remember, I'll share this story. My late teen years, and especially when I went off to college, my first semester, I decided to become a vegetarian. Why? I have no idea. So all I did was eat pasta and bread and some vegetables. And I come back from college and I went overseas and I came back, I was 15 pounds heavier. Okay. I got big. I will never forget the look on my mother's face when I was coming out the gateway. She literally gasped and put her hands on her face and did one of those. And I will never forget when I came home during that winter break, she would make dinner and I'd be in the middle of eating and she would clear my plate. Or she would hug me and then she would kind of pinch my tricep fat. And I was like, what's going on here? And I remembered feeling so betrayed, so kind of unloved because I didn't look a certain way. I didn't look like I used to. I didn't fit a certain image anymore. And therefore, she was trying to fix me, but it was this passive aggressive kind of a way of going about it instead of having a conversation or whatnot. And it took many, many years of healing and journeying and for me to kind of work through that and just get to a healthy point about what being healthy means, but also articulating to her, hey, that wasn't cool. And what you did wasn't right. And it was my journey to go through but it's interesting because body image for a girl and that dynamic with her mother is very powerful.
Yeah. I don't, it is. It's one.
It is. I mean, it really is. And it was a roadblock to our relationship until we worked through that.
It's still a taboo topic. Right. We're still supposed to pretend like it's easy to be thin. Like it's easy to eat healthy, right? It's easy to, look like a movie star as if they don't have hair and makeup and, airbrushing, right? We're still living in such a convoluted world. And then,
bizarre. Well, and then you have the pendulum kind of swinging the other way. And, all this unhealthy food has made its way into the American diet. And a lot of parents are now concerned about their children not being healthy, but they're afraid to have conversations because they want it to be a body image conversation. I'm really trying to approach this from a place of health, but will she think it's body? I mean, it's like you don't win no matter what.
It's the same pedestal and ditch phenomena, right? Of like, you can't, it really has to be a balance. It really does.
Yeah. Interesting. I feel like we could do a whole podcast on that one subject right there. Maybe we do. But this has been a wonderful conversation just about the mother-daughter dynamic and just the fact that I think through your strategies and just through us sharing what we've done and have been through, that there are bridges, there are ways if you value it and you make it a priority, you can get there. There's healing to be done. So, Laurie, per usual, we will put links to where everybody can find you. I know you do one-on-one coaching as well, but we'll make sure all your resources are available to those who might need some help and guidance from our dear Laurie Gerber.
Yeah, it is. This part is hard to do on your own.
Yeah.
It is. There are a lot of things you can do on your own, but it is hard to do it on your own because it's multi-layered, it's vulnerable. Mm-hmm. You don't want to rush it. And it affects everything. It really does. And that's the good news and the bad news, right?
Sure. Yeah. But the good news is that there is a path to healing. There really, really is. But it just takes a sleuth-like work to get in there and understanding some human psychology. But I'm, grateful to say that, I was able to do it and work through it on both mom and dad. And nothing and nobody is perfect, but it can certainly get better and give you some clarity and closure. And I think in the end, that's what we're all hoping for. So, Laurie, thank you. Thank you so much for being with me. I look forward to seeing you again next time. And hopefully you've helped a lot of women who are listening today. Laurie is such a great guest. I'm thinking we ought to have her back and maybe next time have her answer your questions. So stay tuned to my social media platforms. I'm hoping you follow me on Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, all the places. And we'll put out an opportunity for you to be able to ask Laurie your questions, and we'll schedule that podcast for later in the summer. But in the meantime, if you're watching on YouTube, for instance, please, first of all, don't forget to subscribe to my channel. That way you'll be notified every Monday when I release a podcast. And every Thursday, I still do my good old-fashioned tutorials here on YouTube. Leave a comment below if you have one that you would like to share with either me or Laurie. And if you're listening, wherever you listen to podcasts, whether it's Apple, Spotify, whatever your platform of choice is, first of all, can I say thank you? I'm so glad you're here. Can I also encourage you to take the time, rate, review, subscribe, and share Over 50 and Flourishing. It just means the most to be able to get more women who are seeking this kind of content and want to live their best lives in midlife. That's what we're all about. And we talk about all the things here on this platform. Make it a great week, and I will see you next time.
When was the last time you bought fish from a market and you kind of looked at it as they were packing it up and thought, wonder about your story? I used to question everything from nutrition to taste to sustainability. That is until I discovered Wild Alaskan Company. Man, what a great way to get wild caught, perfectly portioned, nutrient-dense seafood delivered directly to your door. Trust me, you haven't tasted fish this good. Hey, not all fish are the same. Get seafood you can trust. Go to wildalaskan.com/over50 for $35 off your first box of premium wild caught seafood. That's wildalaskan.com/over50 for $35 off your first order. Thanks to Wild Alaskan Company for sponsoring this episode. Ladies, we desperately need fiber. Fiber diversity supports a balanced gut microbiome, and yet only 5% of Americans get enough fiber in their diet. Only 5%. And it's hard to do. So that's why I started using Sugar to Fiber Probiotic Mix every single day. So simple, just take a pack of Sugar to Fiber, I add it to my morning smoothie, and I know at that point I am supporting my gut health with this routine at the start of my day. Go to zbiotics.com/over50 and use code over50 at checkout for 15% off any first-time orders of ZBiotics probiotics. ZBiotics has a 100% money-back guarantee, so if you're unsatisfied for any reason, they'll refund your money, no questions asked. Thank you, ZBiotics, for sponsoring this episode.